In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. We thank you, dear Lord, for allowing us to come and join together in your house. Listen to your word and give us wisdom how we deal with this issue that we are facing, that we don't know a lot about it, and how we encourage those whom we serve and we take their blessing. So we will all be united, knowing your words better and understanding your instruction, especially in this area. Help us to be wise and to think before we speak and to get to know what you told us to do. And we can differentiate between the light and between the darkness and testify to the truth with modesty. Fill our hearts with your love and help us to share that love kindly and wisely with everybody around. So everyone deals with us, he will see you in each one of us. Through the intercession of Saint Virgin Mary and all of the heavenly choir, through the prayer of the saints and the martyrs, hear us, O Lord, when we pray thankfully, as you taught us, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Through Christ Jesus our Lord, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Handheld's fine. Sure. All right, good afternoon. Good afternoon. It is, I know, it's a real pleasure, and we are so excited. You have no idea to have Archdeacon Mark back here with us. Last time we saw him, he was not Archdeacon, but now he is, and we're very excited to have him. He's now known as Archie or Marchie in some circles, but we are very excited to have him. Mark lived here, Archdeacon lived here, Archie lived here 21 years ago. So it only took us about 20 years to get him back here, but he was here for 4 years. He did his doctorate up at U of M, and he served our group here at the church. He was our college servant when he was here 20 years ago, so he's like a mentor to us, but he's also a dear friend and a brother, older brother to us. Not that much older, but older brother to us. We used to bother him all the time with questions. We were just reminiscing about that. So we are very happy to have him back. I don't want to take time. You guys are here to hear him speak. But we thank him for being here. This is a very important topic, and we really appreciate his time with us this entire weekend. Today, this evening, and then again tomorrow, there's another session. So thank you again, Arch.
Thank you all for being here and coming to talk about this really important topic. Today's, wrong. I brought up the wrong talk. Let me just put this one away. Today, this one is clergy and servants. Okay. Sure. أنا تحت أمرك. So just to give you a little bit of a background, this is a talk that is based on Can you hear me? It's doing a lot of feedbacking. This is a talk based on one that was given to the clergy in the LA diocese. I can't stand there. Maybe it's too close to my face. It's off. Okay, how about now? It's kind of feedbacking again, isn't it? Maybe it's me. I'll just use the handheld, I guess. Sorry, is the volume too loud? Is it too close? about now? Is that okay? All right. I still hear something. So anyway, this is a talk we had at the clergy meeting maybe a little over a year ago. As you can imagine, this is an issue that all of us are dealing with. And it's a very difficult issue to deal with. Oh, I just got louder. It's a very difficult issue to deal with. It's complicated, it's subtle, and there's lots of different layers to the problems that are going on. One of the layers is culture, one of the layers is language, one of the layers is change in the society, and so it's tough. And so what I'll ask from all of you is just to give me grace as I'm talking. If there's something you disagree with or feel very passionately about, don't get too angry too quickly. Just wait a second. And one thing that I find often happens in these discussions is just a lot of confusion between terms. So you'll see two people yelling at each other, and then once you realize that they're both saying the same thing, you explain to them they're saying the same thing, and then they go, oh, yeah, well, yeah, of course. And they have just been screaming at each other for the last 20 minutes. So this happens a lot, especially in this topic. So we'll try to define our terms, and we'll try to be as transparent as possible. So this is the first talk, and the idea here is a pastoral approach to servants and clergy. So what I really want to focus on today is mostly the approach of how we deal with this issue. It turns out, I don't think among the Coptic Orthodox Christians there's that much diversity in opinion or dogma. The dogma, I think, is fairly consistent. What's very different, and what we have to focus on, especially as clergy and servants, isn't the dogma, it's the approach. It's not the teachings or the belief of the church, it's how we deal with this particular issue and how we deal with people. So this is an issue that Egypt is dealing with as well, and some of you may have seen this series by Abuna Daoud Lemai. He has a 4-part series on YouTube. It's actually very, very good, and it's very, very compassionate and loving, which is great. And so this is an issue that I know Egypt is having more and more problems with, and when I go back to Egypt, I go back every once in a while. I talk to my cousins and my cousins' kids, and they talk about this in churches a lot, actually, interestingly enough, in some of the churches. So I want to just introduce to you sort of what we're doing in the LA Diocese. So there's a task force or a group that Ambassador Serapion sort of assembled together to deal with this issue. So this is, one of the things that we talk about. We have a chat, we meet every once in a while, and we very thoroughly discuss this issue, this one particular issue. One of the people from the group is here, Mary Vandenbusch. She came to attend the talks as well. And there's a few people in there, Abuna Buldus, Abuna Lazarus, Mark Irgis, who of course you guys know, and then Mary Sarkis, who's related to Christina. All right, and I'll just kind of go through it very quickly, but we basically met with Amba Krillos and Amba Serapion several times, discussed this issue in depth. We've spent a lot of time talking to people who are struggling with this, with same-sex attraction. We've spent a lot of time talking to therapists and to different professionals. Several of the people in the group are therapists. There are several clergy in the group now. The group has expanded. This was our very first meeting. And so we focus a lot on developing a way to think about this issue, because it's a very difficult issue. And we've also developed a very small Sunday school curriculum. We put together 2 lessons. If you're interested, I can send them to you, for servants on how to approach this issue in Sunday school class. So today's kind of roadmap for the day is the problem, the position, and the approach. So first we're going to talk about the problem, right? What's happening and what we're dealing with. So the topic is very concerning to all of us, and you can even feel it in Abuna Mina's prayer before we started today. It was, as all his prayers are, very heartfelt and conflicted. And I think all of us have this heartfelt confliction when we deal with this, because we want to protect our kids, we want to do what's right, we want to do what's right before God, we want to teach them the right thing, and even for people who are struggling, we want to say the right thing to them, right? We don't want to lead them astray either, or lead anyone astray. So all of us are very thoughtful and concerned about what's going on, and there's lots of different pieces to this puzzle, right? So the first one is politics. And in the world, we see all kinds of politics. There's gay marriage or Supreme Court decisions, sort of how do we think about this legally? What kind of rights do gay partners have if they are in fact married? Some states have marriage, some states don't. Some states openly ban it. So it's a lot of debate that's out there in the world. And people have very strong opinions, whether or not you should be married, whether or not you shouldn't be married, should you use the word marriage, should you use the word partnership, should you use the word civil union? How should you talk about this? The next one is switching genders, right? And this is a huge issue, right? So, we have children who want to stop their puberty, right? They're a 13-year-old boy who says, I want to be a girl. I'm going to take hormones to block my going into puberty, or I'll start to transition genders, right? And we see young kids having these operations, right? Being empowered by the medical societies or being empowered by their parents, and then years later, just regretting what they did and being so sad that they had their uterus removed and now they want to have kids, right? And so in a lot of ways, this is medical malpractice. These are horrible things that some of our kids are feeling and being exposed to and being allowed to do without the consent of their parents. And sometimes we even hear more horrible things where the parents are blocked from stopping their kid, for example, their 15-year-old boy, from transitioning. Right? So these stories are scary and they're aggravating. I can't imagine if one of my kids was in this situation and they said something like that and went to the nurse and the nurse was stopping me from stopping the nurse. I don't know how I would react. I don't think it would be well. But this is an issue. Another issue, school curriculums. So some of the stuff we see being taught in the schools to very young kids, is borderline pornographic, right? There's some very visual gay sex positions taught to 10, 12-year-olds with pictures and diagrams and two daddies and two mommies and all kinds of things that, take the gay issue out, right? You just don't show a married couple in bed, to a 12-year-old. There's no reason to put that picture in there. But you see this stuff being pushed and pushed in the schools, in the curriculums, earlier and earlier, in more graphic ways. And it's very teacher dependent. You may have a gay or lesbian teacher who's very, really just wants to push this agenda and move things forward. So these are things that scare us. And again, as a parent of three, I can, if my kids were exposed to these things, that would concern me and that would scare me, right? And many of you as servants and clergy are going to have parents come to you very, very scared. And there's a normalization that's going on. And that's sort of the last piece, which is the media, right? The media is definitely, now you see cartoons. It's very hard to find cartoons without dad and his boyfriend or mom and her girlfriend, or sometimes there's an Allstate commercial of insurance and it's a gay couple and it's like, well, why? But nonetheless, we have the media really, really kind of pushing this type of exposure to kids that are smaller and younger, right? So all of these things that are happening, these different issues, they kind of, they put a lot of fear in us. And one of the things we know is, and one of the things Christ said more than anything else is he said, fear not. So whenever we have fear is never a good decision maker. Fear almost always makes very bad decisions. And these things are very fearful, especially if you have children. And as you can see, you start to see all kinds of stuff. Once you start Googling this stuff, it's just everywhere. LGBTQ representation in children's TV is growing. They say we're talking about the love of a family. So here you have two princes who are in a relationship in a cartoon. Corporations are getting into this, so you have Pride Month, and everyone's selling all kinds of stuff. And of course, it's hard not to understand that there's a lot of money to be made here, right? Which is why corporations are very excited about this, right? You get to sell a lot of new different things. It's kind of like Valentine's Day or St. Patrick's Day. It's a corporate, event, right, that we concocted. Groupon gets into it, right, where they sponsor, gay-friendly or gay companies during Pride Month, and the Groupons are better. In the schools, you have Our Mother's House. So these are the books that our kids are seeing, right? These picture books are all over the schools. They're in the library. Occasionally, you'll come across a video of someone kind of flipping through one of these books. Very graphic. It says for ages 10 and up, and it's not for 10 and up. daddy, papa, and me, mama, mommy, mama, and me, right? So lots of these things are out there, and again, all of these things scare us, right? Because it's coming at us from every single direction. And so even the government, here you have Washington State bill seeks to remove parents from children's health care decisions. So if you're over 14, you can block your parents from your medical portal, and your parents have to get permission from you in order for them to have access to your medical records, which include you being able to get any kind of operation you want, any kind of hormone treatment you want. Stuff you can't get a Band-Aid in the emergency room unless if you're 18, but you can get these kinds of things without your parents' permission, and you have to give them permission to have access to your medical records. Scotland, this one's fun. Let pupils change gender aged 4 without their parents' consent. I mean, it's crazy, right? That's just crazy. And tell teachers not to question a child's request to choose a new name or use a different toilet, right? So again, they're encouraging the teachers, hey, if the 4-year-old is feeling something, let him feel it immediately. And this statistic is just amazing. This is the number of adults who identify as LGBTQ, and it's by age. And you can see the Gen X, my age, 4.2% of the population identifies as LGBTQ. Gen Z, which are the younger kids born from 1997, 2003, 21%. It's almost a 5x. It is almost a 5x increase over people my age, right? So, and the fact that it doubled from one generation to the next is also amazing. It's very difficult to wrap my head around this biologically, or have a lot of other explanations as to why such a number could jump up at the rate it's increasing, right? So these are alarming statistics, right? Yes. This is nationwide, yeah. Yeah. So 1/5 of all the kids born in those years think they are LGBT or Q. Right, so, and it's very much working, right? There's a very strong cultural part of coming out. It's very cool. It's celebrated if you're on Instagram and you come out or you change gender. There's all these, posts, and there's all these little sub-worlds that our youth live in that can keep them very isolated in their world. So they're in their room, but they're in another world, and that world is this world, right? And so you never have to leave your room to engage in this world, right? Which makes access so much easier. And like the latest, I saw something on Instagram, this latest thing, which is, where you post a picture of yourself as a boy, and then you post a picture of yourself as a girl, like the next frame, and it's like, guess what? And then you're like, I'm a girl, and then the next picture of you, and then it's like these it's like a whole, viral thing that's happening, and everyone kind of puts these things together, and anyway, it's not important. All right. So this is an issue that obviously has to be addressed in the Coptic community. Of course, I think 5-10 years ago, we were like, no, this is for the outside people. We're immune in here. That's them. This is us, right? That's the Americans. We're the Egyptians. Egyptians aren't gay, right? But now I think we're starting to realize that this is not the case, right? And now all of us are starting, maybe most of us, many of us, know someone who knows someone. Right? And there's a lot of hush-hush, a lot of taboo, a lot of don't tell anybody, a lot of fear, a lot of things, right? And some of the stories, to be honest, that I've heard here are heart-wrenching. A mother called me and said her son came out as gay. He posted on Instagram or something. Her sister, who lives 1 mile away, also has kids her son's age, cousins. They've been cousins and friends for years. As soon as she heard that the son was gay, she's told her kids, do not speak to him again. Remove his contact information from your phone, and we will never go to their house. And when she invites her sister over for the Eid, she says, you can come, but not your son. And she does this in the name of God, because she is a righteous woman. Right? So this has hit our community, and of course this just destroys families, right? It's destroying people. So there's so much pain associated with this situation, right? So there's lots of different people here, right? The first person is the person who this is affected by. There are kids in our congregations who identify themselves as LGBTQ, who feel they're gay. That is the reality of the situation. And what they need is they need help, and they need support, and they need love, and they don't need judgment. Okay? And you may not know that these people are in the room. And so we all have to start being very careful when we're speaking, because those people are in the room. They're there, or their very good friends are there, or their brother is there, or their sister is there, or their mom is there. So as we talk and as we discuss this issue, they are in the room. And the first thing I want to point out in my sentence is they. We need to stop using that word. They and us. We don't want to other people. You don't want to be othered. You don't want to be someone else, right? You don't want to be them. So let's continue to think about this word when we say them and they, us and we, because that immediately puts a separation between us, right? Because they are us and we are them, because they are broken and sinful just like I'm broken and sinful, right? They're not some different category. They're not a Martian from Mars, right? They're just a broken human being in the situation that they find themselves. So there's the people who may be struggling. I don't know what the number is, 1%, 5%, 10%. I have no idea. But then there's the other 95% of the youth group. And they're watching very closely how we talk and how we approach issues. I had a friend of mine, a mom, come to me and said, Al-Hatni, right, help me, my son is 25 and he's leaving the church. And I said, what's going on? I've known her my whole life. We're friends when she was younger. And she said, well, he's really, really upset about how the church views the gay issue. And this was maybe 7 years ago. And I said, she goes, he's ready to leave the church. And I said, how does the church view the gay issue? I actually have never heard a talk on this topic in my life, from a church, from a priest, from a sermon. I have no idea how the church views this issue. This was years ago. And your son has heard so much about it that he's ready to leave the church. Where did he hear all this, Mom? And she's like, it was me. I said a lot of very bad, negative things. And she said so many bad, negative things that this person is ready to leave the church, ready to leave his Lord Christ because of what his mom said. And so we have to be very aware as servants. I mean, I can't tell you, my own family has told me, younger people, they've gone to a church, heard a talk at church, and turned around and walked out because of what the priest or the servant was saying from the pulpit on this topic. Okay? So we must be careful. Everyone else is watching. So even though the people who aren't gay or affected by this are in the room, everyone else is in the room, and they're listening. And then there's the parents of those who are struggling. And like I said before, families are wrecked by all of this. I'll go a little faster. And then forgive me, there are the older people who are very heavily influenced by Arab culture, Islamic culture. In the Quran it says you're supposed to take gay people and push them off a cliff. You're supposed to kill them. So, and we can't believe that we can live among Arab Muslims for this many years and not be affected by this train of thinking. This isn't a Christian approach to solving this problem, but believe me, I've heard many parents say things like that, right? Parents, people in my family talk like this, and it's pretty bad. And all kinds of action, right? So, and the kids are listening, and it doesn't sound very Jesus-like, because Jesus didn't say to anyone, Allah wa lafik. And then there's the second and third generation adults. These are 45, 50-year-old people like me who've been in the church our whole lives, and then they hear a sermon, and their kids are raised and baptized in the church and all, and they hear something and go, you know what, that's not my church. I have one of the kids that was in my Sunday school class way back in the day. He's now 48. He heard a priest give a sermon, and he wrote back to me, he says, not my church, not my God. And he's right. He's not my God either, after what I heard that priest say. So we have to be very thoughtful here, because we have to preach a message of love always. And then, of course, there's the people outside the church in the community who are watching what we do. All right, now let's get to our position. I want to spend more time on the approach. Hopefully I don't run out of time, which I will. How much longer do I have? 5:15, okay. Oh, I got time. Yes.
Before age 18, and regardless of the parents' view. So, is that a good positive sign?
Let me get to, I'm going to get to that exact point here in a little bit.
Should we do a Q&A at the end, maybe?
Let's do Q&A at the end. That's a
We'll
good
do
idea.
Q&A and then we'll pass out index cards. So if you want to do it anonymously, or we'll have the microphone.
Okay, so I put this slide up here just so that we all kind of have some definitions, the way definitions are being used today, just so that when we're speaking, we sort of know what's happening. So sex is basically the two major categories, right? Male and female. You either produce sperm or you produce eggs, and you can't produce both, right? So it's one or the other. Sexual orientation is the person who I'm attracted to. So I'm attracted to males or females. And then gender identity is sort of the thorny one, right? This one is defined, especially now, a lot differently. This one is defined as a function of cultural norms and how you identify and whether or not you choose to have these male characteristics or these female characteristics. And many people in the media will talk about how identity has nothing to do with sex, but of course the overlap is 98%, right? So the notion that my sexual identity isn't, or my gender identity is not the same as my inherent sex, that they're completely different, this isn't something that's really backed by science. But I just wanted to put this out there in case you guys want my slides, you can kind of read about this a bit more. All right, so let's talk about the church's view. First thing, God's given us holy matrimony, and this is a sacramental union between a man and a woman, right, for salvation. So the point of marriage isn't procreation, it isn't living happily ever after. The purpose is salvation, right? And each person brings the other person to God through the course of marriage. Male and female were created for communion with each other, and that communion cuts across emotional, sexual, psychological, all of the different ways in which two people unite. Sacramental marriage is the only proper context for sexual relationships. And sexual union is ordained by God and thus deemed as good. So we don't view sex as bad and it's only tolerated within marriage for the purpose of having a baby. No, we view sex as something good, and we, as we say, the marriage bed is undefiled. Okay? And so under this definition, any sexual gratification in any way outside the context of marriage, right, is not consistent with God's perfect plan, right, for us, and therefore it's a sin. And we can say that this is not what God intended for man to be outside of the context of man and woman, right? So we even see it in the story of Genesis. When God created humans, he created them as a couple, right? Male and female. And for this purpose, he created and put them together. And I kind of put the word abnormal here in quotes because this is also something you should know as servants and as priests, is that one of a very triggering word in our society today, whether or not it should be, is irrelevant. It is triggering, is to use the word abnormal, right? So if you tell someone, but this is abnormal, they're going to get really upset at you really fast, right? Don't use that word, right? A better word is just to say this is inconsistent with God's plan, right? So many of your youth will be very upset and very triggered if you use that word because they have been taught in their schools that you are never to use that word. And anyone who says that word doesn't think, isn't very smart, isn't woke, is archaic, is old-fashioned, is wrong, is a bigot. That's what they were taught, okay? Now, we can discuss how we can unteach them that, right? But for now, let's focus on just using the words that are more precise, not consistent with God's plan, right? And we see it in nature, right? I mean, animals, and it's male and female, sperm and egg, over and over again. And so pornography, adultery, fornication, all of this is the same, right? This is all sexual gratification outside the context of marriage. And I want to say, it doesn't matter whether or not it's homosexual or heterosexual. And a lot of times our youth really don't like it when we pick out homosexual sin as a worse category, much, much worse. It's an abomination before God. Okay? These are very harsh words, and we don't need to make that distinction, right? We can simply say that any sexual gratification outside of marriage isn't part of God's plan, and that's it. Pornography, homosexual, heterosexual, fornication, homosexual, heterosexual, doesn't really matter, right? So don't take this sin and make it bigger than the other sins. This isn't the worst sin. I can't tell you how many moms I've talked to who've said, I don't care if my son sleeps with a lot of girls as long as he's not gay. And then you have to wonder yourself, well, wow, that's an interesting thing to say. You know, but where's her mind is, well, the gay sin that's the worst sin, obviously, right? And the other one's, he's a boy, okay? We don't have that distinction in Christianity, right? We view them the same, and we shouldn't make that distinction in our classrooms, talking with the youth, talking with our parishes. And I want to ask you, how many of your reverences and how many of the servants here have encountered someone who is struggling? You have to raise your hand, but I want you to, you don't have to, you don't want to. Either way, right? And this is important, right? Because there's a humanization. Now it's back. There's a humanization that has to happen. I was at a church once, and it's a very small, very new immigrant church, and I asked them, do you think you have any gay people in this church, any gay youth in the church? And they said, no, shandina. And they were very proud that no one in our church is like that, right? And then you have to ask yourself, you know, and especially when you hear, you know, a priest say something like that, it's like, well, now aren't you a little worried that maybe nobody's coming out to you? No one's told you about it? Maybe they're scared of you. Maybe they're scared of your perspective. And so when we don't know about anybody, then we have to ask ourselves, why is that? Because they're out there, right? And it's important that we as a community start to bond together around these people, okay? Because what's needed here, and I'm going to get to this in a little bit, I'm jumping ahead, is you are signing up for a lifelong struggle, a very hard struggle. And what you really need is support from the community, support from your family, support from people who love you, and for people to love you, really love you, not just say, I love you, but I hate the sin, and I love the sinner. No more than that. So the pastoral approach that I'm suggesting is based on this thinking, right? So there isn't a loving approach and a truth approach, right? Because, you know, sometimes there's truth and love, right? And we have to do both all the time, right? There isn't one that's all love and one that's all truth, okay? There's no contradiction between the two, how we approach this. So it's not either we have a position or we approach with pastoral care, but both are always needed, truth and love all the time, okay? So let's think a little bit about some theology about behind this. First thing is, Jesus does not say that people with sexual thoughts and guilt and feelings are guilty of sexual sin, right? This is at some level biological, right? If I have a man is attracted to women, okay? That is not a sin, right? That's just the way God made me, okay? Now, if I act on that sin, if I start to lust or I start to fantasize or I start to do more things about it, now I've obviously crossed the line. But you can't blame me for being attracted to women because I'm like this. Okay? And so it's virtually impossible not to not have such thoughts and feelings in this corrupted world, but it is possible not to act on them. You know, Abu Nabshoy Kamel used to have this great, Abu Nabshoy Kamel, you know, the saint, he used to have this great quote. He'd said, you know, if you're standing there and a bird poops on your head, you can't stop a bird from pooping on your head, right? It's just bad timing, bad place, right? But you can stop a bird from making a nest on your head, right? So if he poops, it poops, and that happens, and that's okay, you just wipe it off. But if it's gonna nest, now that's your fault, right? Because you stood there long enough for the bird to nest on your head, right? So this is kind of the thinking that I'm talking about here. And Jesus says that it's when we look upon another woman lustfully that's when we've committed sin with them in our hearts. And so I want to, go out on a limb here and say human beings usually do not choose their sexual feelings and predispositions. Okay? I haven't met a gay person who's chosen to be gay. In fact, I've seen the opposite. Every gay person I've met, at least the ones I've met, have tried to pray the gay away, have done everything in their power, listened to their father in confession, tried to fast, tried to repent, tried to stop, tried to change their mind, did everything they can. I know people who are, because of their sexual attraction, their same-sex attraction, want to kill themselves, or know that their dads will kill them when their dad finds out. And they know they'll be ostracized from the community, and they know they'll be hated by some people, and they know they'll be neglected by other people. No one chooses this, right? It's very hard to conceive that I'm going to go into this and just choose it because I want to, piss my dad off, right? That's not how this works. However, we can choose to accept and act on them or reject them and counter what we want, our desires, and so that we can move towards God's intention for our life. And so, based on everything I've talked about, it's very easy to get caught up in all of the stuff I've talked about, right? The political, societal, medical issues that are coming up. However, I want to focus all of you, the priests and the servants, on one very important piece of this equation. Our pastoral concern needs to be the person, the member of the congregation. So our position on this issue, and I want to ask you, what is our position as a Christian on this issue? And we hear all kinds of different Christian positions. I'm going to lay out, they did a survey of all the churches in the United States and asked them what their positions are. First position, this is a sinful choice perspective. So here you have like the Baptists and maybe some extreme Orthodox and all kinds of people believe this, right? This is sinful. It's a choice. You're rebelling against God and you need to be opposed by Christians. Christians must stand up to this choice. The disability sickness perspective. This is a result of the fallen condition of the human body. It's like a bad heart or poor hearing. God didn't make us with bad hearts. He didn't intend for us to be born blind, but some people are born blind and some people have bad hearts. And this is just a function of the fall. And that this state can be healed. And then the third Christian perspective that's out there is the celebration perspective. This is, people were created like this by God, and therefore they should be celebrated in that state. If a man chooses to be a woman, we should celebrate the fact that that's the way God made him. So all of three of these positions are different Christian positions that you find in churches around the United States, around the world. So which one do you think is ours? Huh? None of the above is always a good answer, right? Especially when someone says, which one? Right, so depending on which perspective of these you hold, okay, this is your prior, right, your assumption, you're going to make and judge, condemn others who hold a different position, right? This is why all the fights happen at Thanksgiving, okay? The families get together, one person's holding one position, one person holding, and it's, we're at it, right? And everyone says the same thing, I can't believe how stupid you are, right? And everyone's saying the same thing about everybody else. Right? Because each one's coming from a different perspective. So they're arguing and they just miss each other as they're arguing, okay? Because everyone thinks about it differently. And we have a culture war in the United States because people in America, different people think different perspectives. And each one of those perspectives has some value to it and some truth to it. And so which position do you think we hold? The problem with asking this question is what gets lost in a question like that is that there's a person here. There's a human being here. There's a teenager who's lost and confused and scared. And they're hurt and they're alone in this battle that's raging on inside them. I was watching a video, a podcast of a person who was kind of realizing he was gay. He's Christian, he's in the church, he's a youth leader, and I am. And he had to say it out loud. He said he would just sit there in bed and say, I am gay. And it kept hitting him, and it scared him to death that this realization was happening. But there is a person in pain and a person who is suffering. And the church's position is always the same. We want to ease that pain and that burden in any way possible. That's what we do as a church. That's what love is, right? That's what the body does. So we don't offer a position or a perspective or a policy. The church doesn't offer those things. The church offers a person, right? The church offers Christ. That's what we offer. That's all we have to offer. He is the one offering, and he is the one who's offered. And all we can do as a church is give him, right? Just like the 4 friends did when they brought their paralyzed friend before Christ, and they just presented him. And they said, here he is. Right? And what Christ did was contrary to what they thought he would do. He said, your sins are forgiven. And they're like, that's not why we brought him. Right? But that's what the church has to offer. And that's what we give, and that's what we do best as a community. St. John Chrysostom says, if you've come to church to find holy people, you've made a mistake. If you come to find God, you've chosen correctly. This isn't a community of holy people. This is a community who have found Christ. And Christ is covering all of our sins. Right? This is not a place where the righteous come and be righteous. Because we are not righteous. As St. Paul says, no one is righteous, no, not one. We all fall short of the glory of God. Right? All right, so our final piece, the approach. So we pretty much agree on the position. I think everyone agrees in the community. What we differ on violently is the approach to this issue. So the first thing is, how do I think about this? So I would like us all to stay very focused on the only approach that has ever worked in the history of Christianity, or really the history of mankind. It is the one Christ uses. And so we would like a Christ-centered approach to this problem. So here's what we're not going to talk about today. Curriculum in the schools, politics, medical procedures that alter, and the media. Because these things cloud the issue of this place. Because this place is where people come to find Christ. And this is the place where we come to offer Christ. So we don't take stands on what the Democrats and the Republicans should do, or what some policy is in DC, or what the schools should teach. I'm not saying those are bad things to do. If you want to go to your PTA meeting and you want to argue with the curriculum, I encourage you to do so. But that's not what this place should be about. That's what you should do as a parent. And you want to go join the whatever party and try to shoot down legislation, you knock yourself out. But that's not what this place is about. This place is where sinners come to find Christ. This place is a hospital. Right? And if the hospital wants to put up a board and advertise that you shouldn't smoke because smoking kills you, that's nice. But when someone comes into the emergency room, we take care of that person regardless. And we're not out there preaching, we're out there being physicians. This is the church. So what we're going to talk about today are people, human beings, our brothers and sisters in Christ. These are the sons of God, and revisit the approach that Christ takes with all of us. And I put all of us underlined because there is no them. There is only us. We all just sin differently. Some people sin more exposed than others. That's the only difference. I love this quote by Elder Porphyrios. He says, when you see the devil at the throat of your child, instead of becoming angry with your offspring for going astray, speak to God about it. I'll just stop there. When you see the devil at the throat of your child, look at the powerful imagery. Our kids, these are our kids. Who's the criminal here? The devil is, not the kid. Right? Not they're trying to get us. They're trying to infiltrate the church. No. The devil is, not this. This boy is the Son of God. This is our flesh and blood. This is part of the body of Christ. There's no them. There's no us. Oh, will sound go through if I do a play video? So that's a good option.
actually in a conservative area, and so he was kind of he was, pointed out as the gay kid, and people would mock him and make fun of him and tease him. And one time they actually beat him up, like physically were like assaulting him, and the teacher saw and kind of turned a blind eye. This is years ago. This, I'm not sure how many schools this would happen in today. It was kind of a country town, but he kept pressing on. I mean, he kept wrestling with his faith and sexuality. Finally, he had the courage to come out to his parents. Mom, Dad, I think I'm gay. And his parents says, well, we can't have an abomination living under our roof. And so they kicked him out of the house. And so he wandered the streets as a gay teen for a number of years until at the age of 19, Eric took his own life, becoming part of an unfortunately very high statistic of teenagers who come out as gay. And if they do that in a more conservative.
That's the only video I'm showing, so you don't have to. Thank you. Do you guys know what the word abomination means? I don't know what it is in Arabic. Do you know what it is in Arabic? It's like the worst thing. What is it? Huh? Makrahat al-Rabb. Something God hates. God hates. So these parents said to their kid, God hates you. That was their approach. We can't have someone like you in our house. So the kid left and eventually, probably wandered the streets, feeling what? God hates me, my parents hate me, I hate me, and I'll just kill myself. It's the approach. And in this case, some theology. So we all need Christ. So when you look at this statistic on the right, compared to heterosexual youth, 5 times more likely for LGBT youth to have attempted suicide. So this is not a very happy group. This is not a bunch of people who are just running around and trying to change the world and trying to tell you. This is it's difficult. Even in today's very woke world where everyone's celebrating you, it's very difficult to be this. More statistics. 40% of LGBTQ youth attempted suicide in the past 12 months. These are people, these are our kids. These are our kids' friends. These are people we know. These are the sons and daughters of people we grew up with. And they're hurting. Greater perceived LGBT victimization, such as physical or verbal harassment or abuse, increase the likelihood of self-harming behavior by 2.5 times on average. So there's lots of statistics like this. So what I want to impress upon you today, it's not about our position, it's about our approach. And if you don't read Arabic, and I don't, that word is abawa. It's fatherhood. We have to be fathers. We have to be loving. That's the approach that works. So first and foremost, the priest's role is always fatherhood. Call him abuna. And this population oftentimes has attachment issues with one or both of the parents. Sometimes there's issues in the home that have created these things. But that doesn't necessarily mean that all people with issues in the home have homosexual children. There's lots of people who have daddy issues who didn't turn out to be gay. Right? There's lots of people who were sexually abused who did not turn out to be gay. And so it's very difficult to conclude anything about this. And so what I urge you all to not do, or I urge you to do, is to not make summary statistics. Don't say, oh, well, people are gay because. Don't say that, right? It's very complicated. And as soon as you say something like that, you sound ignorant, to be honest. We barely understand COVID. That's a dead virus, right? If you're going to tell me I know why people are gay, wow, very impressive, right? And very wrong. Right? So don't generalize, don't make stereotypes, don't just go in there saying, I know, let me tell you what happened, I'm an armchair psychologist. Let's take each person as a unique individual and understand them without making generalizations. So we must speak the truth in love. And the goal is to bring this person to repentance in Christ. That's the goal, always. And truth without love is harshness. Truth without love is just being harsh. And it's about clearing your conscience. I can't tell you how many times, a priest or a servant works with someone for 6 months trying to get them back to church. And then the girl comes to church and she's finally back at church for the first time in 6 months. Her parents are so happy. And then some tant comes with alaha kelma, right? Like, oh, this is what you're going to wear at church. Is this the respect you have? And she says something to this girl, and the girl says, I'm never coming back again. And the person who said this kelma, she's very happy. She goes home, right? She just goes home and she's like, she tells her family, you know what I did? This girl, مش لابسة كويس, I told her, I protected God. God needed me to protect him, and I did so, right? And so this, when you speak truth without any love, like this person did, you're just clearing your own conscience, right? I want to feel good about me. It's not about you. I don't care about you. That's not love. And the other way around, love without truth doesn't lead to repentance, and it's not truly love, right? If I keep telling you, yeah, what you're doing is great, keep going, that's wonderful. That's not truthful. That's not going to make them happy. That's not God's intention for their life, right? But again, I have to balance both all the time, not one or the other. So I love this quote by Philip Mamalakis. He's written a great book on parenting toward the kingdom. He says, each person that is struggling is unique and has their own story and their own background. Everyone arrives at this point for different reasons that are not actually all that important. So let's just end the debate of why people are gay. Were they born gay? Did they choose gay? It really doesn't matter, does it? Right now, there's a 17-year-old boy here in front of me. His name is Mina, and he's telling you, I'm really struggling. Do I need to figure out his abuse and everything else and figure out, are you an abomination or not? Are you choosing this? How about I just find you where you're at and understand you as a person, and then we'll move from there. The church position is that this person deserves to be heard, known, and loved, and uniquely guided given their own set of circumstances in a pastoral and loving and non-judgmental place. This is Christ's approach to us, and this is the one we have to take when people who are gay, and there will be people who are gay, there are people who are gay, come into the church. This is the sentiment echoed by Saint Macarius, right? He says, there are those who regard themselves as superior to others and feel they are leading them to eternal life, yet it is hidden to them that they are destroying themselves by pride. We are not better than other people. We are not above anyone. We don't think to ourselves, well, you know what? They're sinners, right? If I ask Saint Anthony, and I said, Saint Anthony, what are you? What's his answer? I'm a sinner. Is he right? Of course he is. He is a sinner. And so are you. And so is everyone. So as soon as I put myself in a position to say, well, you know, I have to help these people, I have to teach them, I have to reach out to them, they don't know what I know, well, then I put myself above them. And as soon as I put myself not at their level, and I see myself different somehow from them, then I've created the worst mistake any Christian can do, right? Now, nothing can help me. Does that make sense? There's a priest in LA, and his name Father Greg Boyle. If you don't know who he is, you should Google him. He's amazing. He's a Jesuit priest. He serves in downtown LA, and he's been rehabilitating gang members for 30 years. His quotes are beyond amazing, and he is beyond amazing. I just, 2 weeks ago, we went and attended one of his talks at USC, and is just always. Anyway, the measure of our compassion lies not in our service to those in the margins. Those in the margins, those are marginalized, those are on the outskirts, the lepers, the sinners, the tax collectors, the prostitutes, the homosexuals, the whatever you want to put here, but only in our willingness to see ourselves in kinship with them. Kinship means a brotherhood. So he's saying, if you want to measure our compassion, it's not how much you serve these people, those people, the people who are beneath me. It's how much I stand next to them as a brother. Do I see myself as one of them, as part of them, as part of a community of sinners? Isn't that what the church is? A community of sinners gathered? So they're not them, they're us. And we're all in this together. Carrying the cross. Many, and this is a quote from Father Thomas Hopko, he says, "Many are asked to bear crosses, those in bad marriages, those with illness, those who desire to marry but have not been able to marry." Father Alexander Schmemann says often that the human life is only about how you deal with what you've been dealt. He emphasized that this is different for every person and that this is all the Lord cares about when he judges our behavior. Homosexuals are those whom God has called to this ascetic feast. Ascetic means takashuf. They are chosen to fight on the front lines of the spiritual battle of our time. They are among those who are most obviously called to be martyrs and confessors for Christ in humanity's present condition. Look at the language. Do you want to talk about a cross? When a youth comes to Abuna, a 24-year-old boy, and says, Abuna, I really want to have sex. Abuna says, well, you'll get married someday and then you can have sex. When someone who's having same-sex attraction says that, what's he hear? No sex, no pornography, no masturbation, nothing. You're just going to sit there like that. For how long, Abuna? Until you die. That's what we tell them. You are to be single. You will die alone. You'll never have a companion. You'll never have that kind of relationship. You'll never have a partner in life. You'll die alone. That's what we tell them, isn't it? And so the least we can do is look at this cross, and again, I love this quote, and look in awe at how those people carry that cross. It's a very heavy, heavy cross. And when I look at the monks in Egypt and I say, well, they're monks, yeah, but they chose it. Many people who are struggling from same-sex attraction don't choose it, and they're very mad at God for giving this to them. Many of them ask God, why did you create me like this? Why am I like this? Why is this happening to me? Why don't I get to be married? Why don't I get to be happy? Why don't I get to have a relationship? I don't know. But the least I can do is be empathetic and sympathetic and try to look at this cross that you're carrying with some awe and some reverence and some love and some tenderness. Instead, I have to carry this cross, and then I'm going to come to the place, the only place that can heal me, and the people there will hate me, and they'll judge me, and they'll call me an abomination. So this quote again is beautiful. Do we look in awe at those carrying heavy burdens, or do we criticize the way they are carrying them? And this applies again to all of us in all situations, for all sins and all crosses. And so I think what I'm hoping to convey here is what I'm talking about are spiritual things. These aren't very particular to homosexual, heterosexual, whatever, anything. These are spiritual concepts. These are Christ-given biblical principles that we should apply equally to everybody all the time. Yep.
They found themselves. So it is something naturally, or something came to their mind and they reinforced the thought, or at the end of the day, isn't it a choice?
So what do you mean? So let me step back. When you say it is a choice, you have a choice to act on it, for sure, and you have a choice to encourage it. So, and this is a very good question, right? Can I encourage it? Right. So say I have a sexual addiction, a normal heterosexual sexual addiction, right? I can encourage that addiction by viewing lots of pornography, and I can encourage it by engaging in sexual acts with lots of different people. I can continue that. So I can make it worse for myself, right? So again, this is a very pastoral approach, right? And I think the point I want to make here is that the priest or the pastor or the servant has to get into the story a little bit more, right? Because some stories are, I felt like this since I was 10. I always knew I was different. All the other boys made fun of me. I never liked sports. I was more sensitive. And then I realized, so there's that story. And then there's another story where, maybe a girl in college says, I started experimenting, and maybe I started doing this with other people, and I broke up with my boyfriend. I really don't like boys anymore, and boys are terrible, so now I'm going to start doing this stuff. And then, now she can perpetuate it. She can actually make it worse on herself, right? So each person is unique, right? And so I guess the point I really want to drive across is there is no answer, no single answer. Right? There is no, is this a choice or not? Can I stop it or not? Each person's unique, and I think this is the beauty of the church, right? Where the priest can get to know the person and understand what's driving it, right? Is this an issue with my father? Is this an issue with my past boyfriend? Is this an issue with, right? And start to get into diagnosing it spiritually. Makes sense?
Another question. The general approach for the community, when they doubt even that he or she is homosexual, to isolate this person, to ask our kids, to ask everybody to get away, which put too much pressure on this person, and I think it make him or her more stubborn. On the other hand, no, I care about my kids, even in the classroom, not only in my house, and I cannot let them mingle with this person, otherwise they're gonna be bad influence. One apple will ruin the whole box, and this story. So,
I feel like if there's a person that's feeling this way and they're coming to church and attending classes, they're probably not really acting much on it or influencing others with their thoughts because they know it'll be refused, but they're struggling against it. And so I feel like even in a Sunday school class, like you said, there could be people who are struggling with this, and we wouldn't know because I don't think they'll be openly out about it in this setting, and they wouldn't really influence the others at that point. Yani. But I feel like those who are open about it are probably not going to come openly here. Like, I don't think you'll see a couple holding hands and coming into church or requesting a blessing like in the Catholic Church or something, or yet, I guess what I'm saying. But like to Otsek's points about, I feel like they wouldn't be really influencing others because they know what could happen, and so they're hiding and they're struggling against it, and they're still coming to church and attending Sunday school and talking to Abuna.
now they start to be bold. They start to be bold, and they are okay. But they're feeling that they are rejected. Close the door more and more in front of their face.
Again, there's it's a very context specific, right? So is this kid 12? Is this kid 15? Is this kid 20? How boldened are they? How close to the church are they? So there's lots of different questions here. But stepping back, and I'll talk to the parents tomorrow, inshallah, if I'm still around. But there are other flights home. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. Like one of the things I'll say is, first of all, we definitely in our community have a bit of a paranoia about this particular topic, right? You don't catch being gay like, the cold, right? Stand next to someone's gay, you don't become gay. It doesn't work like that. And I think we have a little bit of that fear. They're going to infiltrate my kids. And I think it's very important, and I'll talk to the parents tomorrow about this, but that's fear. And it's an irrational fear, right? Because most of the time what's happening is actually at the retreats, right? The really good kids who aren't gay, they're showing each other pornography on their phones, right? So, this happens at the church retreats, right? So, and in LA we have, Balawi that happen at church retreats, right? So, it's an unfounded fear, actually, right? Much worse things happen with all the good kids at the church than this. And so the parents' position of trying to isolate and terminate this cancerous person, right? This is just simply not Christian, right? This is not what Christ did. In fact, Christ sought those people out, right? And when we get in the position of saying, well, but they're bad, so we don't want them coming in here and mixing with the good. There's 3 heresies in that statement, right? Because you just contradicted St. Paul by saying we're the good people, the righteous people, right? They're the bad people. No, they're the sons of God, right? And again, it doesn't quite work like that, right? We should be out being the hospital. I mean, if we start saying things like, don't come to the hospital because you're really sick, then it's odd, right? Then where do I go? If I can't come here, then where do I go? Can we take questions to end? Abuna just gets a special exemption because he's Abuna. You guys know that, yani. This is the black thing, ala tool. I just want to get to the rest of the... I only have like 30 or 40 more slides, so yani, I'm almost done. Okay, so what's that? So how do I talk about it? I highlighted something very important. Don't make the sin bigger than Christ. And again, if you can tell, I'm not really even talking about same-sex attraction at this point. I'm talking about any sin. Don't make sin bigger than God. Don't talk about the sin. Talk about God. Talk about Christ. Stay Christ-focused. Stay positive. The way Christ delivers messages on the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are the poor. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are the humble. Blessed are the merciful. Point out the light instead of don't. Okay? The thing I want to talk about, speaking the truth, I think everyone's starting to go for the coffee now. It's getting long. The truth is speaking about Christ. So focus on Him. Speaking the truth is about speaking about a person, not a position. Right? The church isn't about positions. It's not about rules. It's about we are followers of Christ. Speak about Him. Make Him the focus, the I am. And do we start with, this is a sin? If someone comes out to me and says something, say, that's wrong. I mean, if anyone's talking to you about a problem they have and you start with, that's wrong. And you're like, I got in a fight with my husband. You shouldn't get in a fight with your husband. I know that. That's why I'm talking to you, right? I got arrested for drunk driving. You shouldn't drink drunk. I know that. That's why I'm talking to you, right? So when you start with an attack, it doesn't go well, right? This is common sense, and it's also Christianity. It's how Jesus approached sinners. He didn't start with the attack. He never started with the attack, right? Even in the story of the adulterous woman, if you look at the story carefully, everyone loves to say, he told her, go sin no more. When did he say that? At the very end, right? What did he do in the beginning? Well, first, he saved her life. Then he didn't judge her. Then he made the people who were going to kill her go away. And then he looked at her so loving. And at this point, she's now what? A Christian. She's like, I'm with this guy. This guy can tell me anything. I'm going to listen to this guy, right? What we do is we jump to the end. We have to put in the work first. We have to get to know the person first. We have to show them love first. We have to save their life first. And then, if it comes to it and we say, go and sin no more, they're like, you're right. I shouldn't. Because you and I, we have a relationship. This is Christ's approach. This should be our approach. Not shoot the truth out at people and quote verses at them. Right? If a Muslim person walked into the church and says, hey, I want to be Christian, I want to join your community. Do we start with, Muslims are wrong? This is bad? You follow the devil? Who says that? Welcome. What's your name? Come to our Gabi meal. Where do you live? How can I help you? Right? Common sense. So speaking the truth is not the same as judging someone. And this is confused in today's society. As soon as you tell someone the truth, they say you're judging me. And that's not always the case. But that doesn't mean that telling someone they're wrong, even if you aren't judging them, is called for in most situations. Sometimes just being a presence in their life is enough. And again, we've already discussed the position. I'm talking about the approach, right? And there are different approaches. As Abuna pointed out, there's different kinds of people. There are people who are angry. They hate God. They hate the church. They hate their parents. They hate the Coptic community. We have to put them and give them a little bit more padding. And then there's people who are in the church and raised and loved and are trying to resist. We give them a different message. Everyone is approached their own way. And this takes wisdom and it takes discernment, right? So what I'm suggesting is not everybody should be giving everybody advice all the time. What everyone should be doing is loving everybody all the time. But giving advice, that's a calling. That's a special thing. It's not for everyone, right? So be careful that you're not out just giving advice. I can't tell you how many people tell me things like, who told you that? And it's some kid who told them something really dumb. Right? Don't be that. If someone asks and wants to talk about it in an open conversation, then it's okay to tell them the truth, right? But wait till people ask you, right? In fact, the ratio that I like to see is love, 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 like 80 of those to one truth, right? And even the truth comes after you poke at me a little bit, right? Now, the priests obviously have a slightly different role. They're a little bit more truth-focused, which is okay. But as the rest of us, more love, less preaching, less verses, and we'll talk more about that here in a second. So the church gets to know the person through a relationship. Again, I'm talking about how we do this. If one of your kids in Sunday school, one of the kids of your friends comes out, if one of someone you know from church or work or wherever, get to know the person. Each person is unique. They have a human dignity. They deserve to be heard. They deserve to be respected. Listen to their story. Don't just tell them Leviticus. Don't tell them about Sodom and Gomorrah. Tell me about what happened to you when you were young. Tell me about that relationship with your mom. Tell me about what your friend did. Tell me about what the church did. Understand, have a piece of that community. That doesn't mean that we agree or condone their actions. Me listening to someone who's gay and listening to their story doesn't mean I agree with what they're doing. Just like me listening to someone who's, lusting or robbing or lying or judging doesn't mean I agree. When someone says, I have this problem judging people and I tend to judge people, and I listen and I go, okay, well, why do you think that is? I'm not agreeing with him, right? I'm listening. And that's okay to listen. I don't have to tell you judging is bad. Yeah, I know. Okay? The temptation is always to tell people the wrong. We love that. We love to do that. To tell everyone what we think. Rather, just draw close. People are out pushing solutions. Do this and you'll get better. You just have to fast. You just have to do this. You have to do that. Go to church more. Go to Mishadaf A. It's not that simple. And when Christ engaged with people, he's the model. He just drew near to people. He made himself accessible, right? Even to the point where he became human. That's very accessible, right? Because you're not human, you're God. And to come down to the level of a person and become dust, that's amazing. And not just anybody, homeless guy. Such that even the disciples would kind of make fun of him every once in a while. How approachable was Christ? He was among them, with them. They couldn't even tell he was unique. Sometimes they get asked, who are you? What are you? They don't know. But he's there in their presence, right? He drew close. He made himself available. That's the approach. I'm here for you. I'm here to listen. This is a long struggle. Don't think you're going to solve it in a week. Don't think it's a month and it's gone. You got to be in it for the long haul. If someone says, I have an anger issue, they're going to probably die with an anger issue. You don't just get over an anger issue, right? You fight against it your whole life, and you still have an anger issue, right? This is the same. No one just gets over anything. Again, don't make the sin bigger than Christ. We need to present the whole gospel. Jesus never starts by telling the sinner his sin. Samaritan woman, adulterous woman, Zacchaeus, I already talked about this. How can I help? So this is a very nice quote from Anthony Bloom. He says, "It seems to me, and I am personally convinced, that the church must never speak from a position of strength. It ought not to be one of the forces influencing this or that state. The church ought to be," and this is beautiful, "if you will, just as powerless as God himself, which does not coerce, but which calls and unveils the beauty and the truth of things without imposing them." Christianity is not about imposing. You can't force someone to be a Christian. You can't force someone to be a follower of Jesus. You can force them to come to church, but you can't make them love God. That's the wrong religion. Which does not coerce, but which calls and unveils the beauty and the truth of things without imposing them. And as soon as the church begins to exercise power, it loses its most profound characteristic, which is divine love. The church isn't a place about power and forcing people to act a certain way. It's a place where we call out the truth and beauty of Jesus, and you say, "Follow me." And they either come or they don't. And sometimes they choose not to. And that's okay. Let them choose. Final thing, how do I minister to people in this situation? This crisis usually happens when kids are having the most inner turmoil. The kids in these positions are suffering. They aren't the enemy. They aren't the agenda. They're not the rainbow pride movement. They're not out trying to get everybody. They're not trying to infiltrate our church and get our kids. Okay? We don't want to demonize people. Don't do that. Be patient and kind. Don't attack. This applies to all sins at all time. The world is out there giving quick fix answers. In Instagram, they tell you, you just have to change gender and you're going to be happy. I know your suicide rate is 5 times higher than the rest, and you're very depressed and you're very sad, but if you just came out, everything would be better. So the world is peddling these very quick fix answers, and they're not truth, and they don't work. And it's okay for us to recognize that. But how we get the kids there is important. It's not important, it's everything. If you tell the kid, look, don't be an idiot, بطل هبل, العبط ده من الشيطان, and we start telling them all these very harsh things, the kid's going to say, what do you know? I'm done with you and your church. And they walk away. The key is to focus on long term. The lifestyle, the gay lifestyle, can be a nightmare. It involves many partners sometimes. It involves very difficult relationships. It involves drug use sometimes. It can be a very difficult life. It's not fulfilling. Any life of sin is not fulfilling. So any life of sin will lead naturally to repentance, because people eventually, like the prodigal son, find themselves with a bunch of pigs. And then they realize, this is no good, my father's house is better. Be patient. Be there with them on the journey. Let them know the door is always open. They come back, but we have to be loving and patient. A continuous need, so they're constantly looking for something new and exciting to fill this hole, which soon reappears. Orthodoxy talks to this long path, the long path of asceticism and true joy. And one is about self-fulfillment, and one is about self-emptying. Right? And I love this last bullet point. Self-fulfillment ends in emptiness, and self-emptiness ends in fulfillment. Right? And that's the Orthodox path. So again, we're talking about the approach. How do I minister to them? I love this. It's hard to throw stones when you're busy washing feet. Love like Jesus. We are called to serve and wash their feet. Yes, even them. All of them. These people are sometimes victims, very often of abuse or trauma. And then we victimize the victims even more in the one place they can come for comfort, the one place they can come for reprieve. This leads to shame, which eventually leads them to leaving the church where they don't feel accepted and they feel hated. Like I said before, This is a very difficult, if I ask you, someone who is legitimately same-sex attracted, has tried to get over it and can't, and I say, okay, now here's the deal. You die alone, you never have sexual relations with anyone, you never get to do any of the things that most people consider as part of a normal life. That's a very hard call to make. For you to say, okay, I'm in. I get to die alone. So the least we can do is support you, to encourage you, to keep telling you, we're with you, we're here for you, we love you, you're a part of us, right? And encourage them to want to try, to want to struggle. Why would I want to struggle if everyone at church hates me? I will just hate you back. And then we find these websites like, Coptic Queer. You go on Coptic Queer, I don't know if you ever read these things, they're angry and they're hurt. They were hurt by people in the church that in ways you can't imagine. Some of the stories I read on there will tear your heart apart. It's so easy for me to stand back and say, they're bad. But I see their pain. I see that they were hurt. And if we could have prevented the hurt at some point in their lives, maybe they wouldn't have ended up at this place. Maybe they would come to the church and say, actually, my church loved me and embraced me. They never told me to take this lifestyle, but at least they supported me in my struggle. Okay, if someone comes out to you, first thing, thank you. And listen to their story. It's very hard to come out to another person. And I've heard nightmare stories of people who've come out and then other people tell the story to people in the church. It's destructive. It's very scary. Very, very, very scary. Even to a priest, they're scared to tell the priest who has been sworn never to tell a confession. And they're scared of him because he might slip. He might say something. It's the work of the Holy Spirit to convict someone of sin. You will not convict someone of sin. God does that. I can be there for you. I can speak truth if you ask me. I can be a light of the world, but I will never convict your heart. God only does that. That's the work of the Holy Spirit. You are asking, you are inviting and exploring and supporting this person in their journey towards Christ, and each one has a different journey. I don't know that one journey is like the other. This is a person named John Gottman. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's for those who are therapists in the room, he's very famous. He's like the man in therapy. He's actually quite great. He says, human nature dictates that it is virtually impossible to accept advice from someone unless you feel that that person understands you. And this is so true. How many times, when parents say things to kids and the kids look back, you don't even know me. And of course the parents do, right? You're my kid. But the kid doesn't feel like you know me. And so I'm not going to listen to you because you don't know who I am. As far as resources go, so in our diocese we have started, I guess for lack of a better word, a support group. It's called hisbeloved.co. I encourage any of you, if you know someone who's struggling in this area, to look at this website, and there's an email and some cell phone numbers, I think, and you can reach out. And there's people, we meet every 2 weeks. There's a group of LGBTQ Coptic kids in our group, and we just talk with them. We talk to them about their week. We talk about Christ. We talk about meditations. People share, and it's just a place to be seen and to be heard and to be loved, and for the church, for them to know that the church loves them. So if you know anyone in this situation, feel free to send out the URL, and then they can kind of reach us through the channels. And anyway, okay. Let's see what else. All right, so I want to. I know there's. Oh wow, 5:15. Okay. Oh, there's food. All right, forget the flight back home. I'll stay. I'll tell you the story. It's very quickly. You've all heard the story. It's about Abu Ma'ar, St. Macarius. Okay? St. Macarius was walking with his disciple. Look, I'll just, so you don't look. St. Macarius was walking with his disciple. His disciple walks ahead of him, and he comes across a pagan priest, and the pagan priest was doing pagan things. حلو? And so St. Macarius' disciple says to him, "O devil, where are you off to?" Right? Sura'alu kilma. Right? He looked at the pagan priest, he says, "You devil." Okay? What did the pagan priest do? Right? The pagan priest took him and beat him up and almost killed him. Right? And the guy runs off and barely saves his own life. Abba Macarius' disciple. Then St. Macarius comes walking up slowly. He's an older man. He comes running up and he says, "Greetings, greetings, you wary man." And he says this beautiful, smiley thing to this pagan priest. And the pagan priest says, "Why are you talking to me like this? Why are you so nice to me? I almost just killed your disciple. Why do you love me?" Okay? And how does he know he loves him? His face, the way St. Macarius is looking at him. It turns out he has a small conversation with St. Macarius. This man leaves being a pagan, becomes a Christian, becomes a monk, and becomes a disciple of St. Macarius. Okay? Why? Because he said something nice to him. Because he showed him love. The first disciple did what we do. "Hey, devil, what are you doing? Yashtan." And the guy looked at him and said, "Oh, I'm going to beat you up." That's not the reaction we want. St. Macarius' reaction was one of love. Now let me ask you, does St. Macarius encourage pagan worship? Is he tolerant of pagan worship? Then why didn't he attack the pagan worship? That's what he should do, right? That's what we say. If I don't attack it, then I agree with it. Did St. Macarius attack it? No. Wow, the mahshi rihtu halu awi. So the point here is, sorry, I have little attention issues. The point here is St. Macarius' approach wasn't to attack, it was to love. But he didn't mean I accept pagan worship. But it's okay. And then St. Macarius ends with this statement that you all heard, I'm sure, or you should know at the very bottom. It says, "So Abba Macarius said, one evil word makes even the good evil, while the good word makes the evil good." There it is. The good word makes the evil man good, and the evil word makes the good man evil. These are our fathers. This is the wisdom. This is our Christianity. This is our approach. Now I want to compare that to approach we see here in the United States. Do you guys know this word? This is a horrible word. This is a very offensive word towards homosexuals. God hates you, you're going to hell. That's a little boy. They gave a little boy signs like that to hold. This isn't Christianity. There may be Bible verses at the bottom of that, but that's not Christian. Compare this to the way St. Macarius approached the situation. And then again, Father Greg Boyle, you have made God in your image when he hates the same people you do. So when I see someone holding up a sign that says God hates fags, I think, no, you hate fags. This isn't about God, this is about you. And we like to make it about ourselves. Okay, I'll stop there. تفضل بونا.
Some of us will think this way. I have a question about the last few verses of the epistle of St. Paul to the Romans, where he said, "For this reason God gave them up to vile passion. For even their women exchanged the natural use for what is against nature. Likewise also the men, living in a natural use of the women, burned in their lust for one another, men with men, committing what is shameful, and receiving in themselves the penalty of their error, which was due." He said, "Who, knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving the death, not only do the same, but also approve of those who practice them." could the reason being thinking this way is those amongst us who are leaving the fear of God or living in the fear of God out, they are attracted to think this way?
I don't understand what's the question? Do you feel like the attraction occurs because they have left the fear of God?
Yes.
I don't know. I can only speak anecdotally from the people I've met or the interviews I've seen. But I have seen so many interviews now, people telling their story, raised in the church, love Jesus, love Christianity, servants, Protestant and Orthodox. And in fact, one guy was telling his story and he said, he went to a retreat and all the servants were talking to the boys, like 13-year-old boys, don't look at girls and don't look at pornography and don't lust after them. And he was like, I'm a saint. I don't have any of these problems. And so he was so happy with himself. He's like, and then he said, I felt self-righteous. I was like, I don't lust with the girls, all these boys, and they show me something like, I'm too good. I love Jesus. I'm not like this. But he was actually he was a better Christian. So I guess it's difficult. Everyone has a story. It's just very hard to generalize. I've seen both. But usually there's something else that's going on. It isn't, I don't think, as simple as, one person has the fear of God and one person doesn't. I've seen both kinds of cases, b'saraha. And people raised in wonderful homes with wonderful servant parents and where one kid's an angel and the other kid's also an angel, but he's also same-sex attracted and he's trying to stop and he doesn't know how. So there's all kinds of different, it's very hard to generalize. And believe me, I don't understand the numbers, why they're increasing the way they're increasing. Biology doesn't explain things, even culture doesn't explain things like this. So I don't understand, to be honest. Yeah.
Do we want to take a dinner break and then come back for Q&A, or you want to?
What we could do, if you guys want, while you guys are eating?
Or while we eat?
Yeah. Okay. So the first question is, how is this Orthodox approach you are advocating, how is it compared to the Catholic approach to the same topic? Of course, I'm guessing the person asking the question is referring to the recent blessing, the Pope Francis's decision, or the Catholic Church's decision to bless same-sex unions. I'm guessing that's what it is. Because that's, right now, as far as I can tell, that's the only difference. Even the Protestant traditional churches have the same approach. We all have the same doctrines. There are some evangelical churches, I think the Lutheran churches, there's a few churches who will ordain women bishops or lesbian bishops or gay bishops or whatever the case may be. But for the most part, I think the Catholic Church is not that way. Quick question, is this being live streamed? Patrick, is this live streamed? Okay, I'm thinking maybe we not live stream the questions in case someone wants to ask a question, and then we can just record it, and then that way in case I say something really bad, it doesn't get sent to the world. Okay, so how is this different? Well, in our church, we don't have the Orthodox Church, we don't have this idea of blessing a couple. We don't do that. We have the sacrament of matrimony. And as you know, in the Orthodox Church, we won't marry a gay couple. In the Catholic Church, they also will not marry a gay couple. In the Catholic Church, they will not ordain anyone who's an openly gay priest, and neither will we. So the only difference I see is in this recent decree by Pope Francis about blessing same-sex unions. Just to be clear, what they advocate, if you read the document that the Vatican put out, it's interesting because they talk about the word blessing, and they have a very long, very theological discussion of what this word means. And they distinguish between liturgical blessing and a non-liturgical blessing. And so they say a liturgical blessing is when you bless something for its intended use. And that is something, so they would never bless something that was sinful. And because it has to be good and proper. But then they distinguish that and they say, well, there's this kind of this non-liturgical blessing, right? And their idea is this kind of how Jesus blessed by his presence, okay? And so in that case, I don't need to evaluate you before I give you a blessing. And I think for me, the distinction that I make is if someone who's a murderer, comes up to a priest and says, Abuna, can you bless me? Abuna's gonna bless him, right? But if he says, can you bless my murder? I want to commit murder tomorrow. Can you bless that? That's different, right? And what's interesting about the way the Catholic Church worded it is they said, we bless things that we know are sinful. So they acknowledge that the same-sex union is sinful, that these two men, for example, are living together in a same-sex attracted relationship, and yet they acknowledge this is sinful, which I would say consistent with us, and then they bless it anyway. And so the word blessing can mean lots of things, right? One of them could mean I confer a blessing that means I agree upon this. Like, I want your blessing to take your daughter's hand in marriage, right? Then I'm blessing you. I'm giving you my permission to marry my daughter. I'm giving you my blessing, okay? But that's not the way they view it. And what they're saying is I want to bring God's presence into this thing. We don't have that in the Orthodox Church, so I guess I don't know if I answered that question or not, but that's all I have to say about that. Yeah, go ahead.
Just a question for you. All our life in the Orthodox Church, we learned to run away, run from the sin, run from the discussion. Firro, like the monks said, right? If 17 years old come to us and ask, hey, my friend, the classmate, said that he's gay, and he's a friend of mine, how I deal with him. If I'm following this teaching and I tell him, first of all, yes, I'll tell him don't hate him, but I can't tell him love him and discuss and talk because he's not immune, right? So the immunity comes to us with life experience or the priest, archdiakon, someone that is studied in depth, like Jehovah's Witness, for instance. If a Jehovah's Witness comes to us, even Bob Shinoda said, just close the door, don't discuss. You're not ready to discuss this. You're not the bishop, you're not the one who studied into depth. So for anyone to get into this discussion, it could be contagious, right? So it's love, but with conditions.
Okay, I hear the spirit of your question, and I like the spirit of your question. There's a lot of wisdom and discernment in it. There's a few things you said that are hard to hear. And I don't think you meant them, but you have to be careful. And I'm going to answer your question in a second, but first I'll attack you. When you say with love, truth and love. So first thing is you don't want to say something like love with conditions, right? Because we're taught unconditional love. And you don't want to say, we have to tell them, you said love them and listen to them and talk to them and you put them all in the same sentence. And you have to be careful because I do have to love them. I have to love my enemies. I have to love the people who try to kill me and those who persecute me and those who despitefully use me and everybody else. So absolutely, I love everyone all the time, always, no matter what, okay? No matter what state they're in, no matter what sin they're doing, right? Because your friend, your son, the 17-year-old boy, whoever you're talking about, also has friends, most of his friends, who look at pornography all the time, who have sex with girls in high school all the time, who are abusive to people all the time, okay? And I don't tell him to run away from those people, right? So I single out homosexuality. Okay, so that's a very good question. So the key here is the approach is, again, very important, right? So what you're talking about is discernment, ifraz, okay? And that's a very important trait, right? So if I'm struggling with alcoholism, مثلا, and I've been sober for 6 months, and my friend says, hey, let's go to the bar and, and you can drink water and I'll have a beer. It's pretty stupid of me to go to the bar and talk with him, right? Because I'm going to be tempted at the bar. And if I have one drink at the bar, I'm going to be drunk for another month, right? So discernment and wisdom will tell me, don't go to a bar and talk about the Rams or, Detroit Lions, who are actually, winning. But let's go somewhere else, because I can't handle that kind of temptation, okay? This is a very important spiritual principle in Christianity. And this is what the fathers and the monks teach us: run from certain things. But we have to be a little careful, because I think sometimes, because of our fear and because of our language and because we're not quite saying things the way they're being heard, the kids hear something else, right? So I'll tell you a story, a true story. This happened to me. I was in Seattle. I was visiting, our friends in Seattle. And one of the girls who was in my Sunday school class, who now is a mom of 3, she comes up to me and she goes, you won't believe this, Mark. On Mother's Day, okay, my girl is 6 years old, first grade, and the teacher reads a book about 2 fathers on Mother's Day, right? And she's mad, right? She's like, what are they doing? Why are they trying to do this to my kid? She's in first grade, haram alaik, and she's just going crazy. And she has a right to go crazy. I mean, that's just stupid, right? But, so I said to her, I go, look, her name is Rhonda. I said, listen, Rhonda, you have to be very careful, right? Because I agree with you. You shouldn't read a book about 2 fathers on Mother's Day. But your daughter is going to look at you, and she's going to see the veins in your neck start popping and see you angry and talk about Leviticus, and these people are going to hell, and this is wrong, and these people are an abomination, and, okay? And she's going to look at you and she's going to say, Mommy, why are you so angry? The teacher teaches me to be love people, and to respect people, and to tolerate people, and you, Mommy, are crazy. And honestly, she stopped. She looked at me and she goes, oh my God, that's exactly what happened. My daughter was like, Mommy, you're not talking like Jesus. The teacher talks like Jesus, and you're not like Jesus. Okay? So, Mommy's right, but she's so wrong. And the lesson her daughter learned is, Mommy hates, teacher doesn't hate. Even though she's right, okay? So what I'm trying to say is, what's more important than being right is how this message is conveyed. So if it's stay away from them, they can influence you, they are bad people, they are choosing sin, they're gonna look at you, they're going, actually, he's a great kid. And he's actually very nice. And next thing you know, you look like the bad guy. And your message gets lost in your tone. I mean, St. John Chrysostom says, it doesn't matter what you say if it's said in anger. Right? So, unfortunately, because we're so emotional from everything else, and the media and the politics and the curriculum and the everything else that's happening, as soon as we see anything happening, our reaction is to jump and kill it. And if you do that, you're gonna lose. I'm just telling you, you lose. Because your only 2 options when you go full attack is either you're gonna create a kid who's gonna push back at you and say, you know what, Dad, you're wrong, your church is full of bigots, you're all bad, which happens a lot. Or, almost worse, you're gonna create a little Nazi kid, a little kid who hates just like you do. A little kid who says, yeah, I hate gay people. One time I gave a talk at a church about this topic. And then after I was done, Abuna came and he walked with me to the parking lot and he said, thank you, Archie, that was such a nice talk. You said the right things, Misharfi. And then he starts laughing. He says, let me tell you a story about what one of the kids said to me. One of the kids came running up after your talk and he said, Abuna, is Archie right? And he goes, yeah, I think, yeah, everything he said was fine. And he said, but Archie said we're supposed to love gay people. And Abuna looks at him and he goes, yeah, you're supposed to love everybody, including your enemies. And he goes, yeah, but not gay people, right? And Abuna's laughing. He's telling me a story. He's like, can you believe this kid said this? And I'm like, no, you're supposed to love everybody. And I didn't say this out loud, but I thought it, Abuna, why are you laughing? This is scary. You have a 19-year-old boy who went through your whole church and still thinks, I don't have to love people. What did you teach him? 19 years of Sunday school, and he doesn't know the message of the gospel? He still thinks you're supposed to hate gay people. What did his parents tell him? What did the servants tell him? How did he get through the system and still think God wants me to hate? So that's the fear. So when you go hard, you get two outcomes, right? One or the other. So what I'm encouraging, I mean, it's okay. What I'm encouraging you to think about is the approach is more important. I'll tell you guys another story. This is my daughter. She was in 9th grade. If you wanna respond, go ahead. Tell me. What do you think? Sorry. No, go ahead.
Engaging in the discussion. So I'm shielding the kids, not telling them to hate, but I'm trying to shield them in that age and say, don't get into discussion. They might be affected.
Okay, I know, and I agree with that. What I'm encouraging you, I think we're missing each other. What I'm encouraging you is the way you tell them not to engage. It has to be very careful. And if you have a hint of, they're gonna sense it and they're gonna push back on it. You come off calmly and you can say whatever you want to your kid. Does that make it better? I'll still tell you the story about my daughter. Well, you want to go ahead. No, I'll save that for the parents' talk tomorrow. Okay, go ahead. Oh, okay, sorry. Does the church in LA have a guidance counselor? If not, do you recommend one? We have a lot of guidance counselors in the diocese. There's tons of therapists, tons of psychologists. There is a problem if you know someone who's same-sex attracted. The laws in California are such that if a therapist suggests to anyone not to be same-sex attracted, they can lose their license. So a lot of the California therapists that are in our group are scared of this topic because the laws are against you, right? And this is one of the many ways the laws are against you. So they are fearful to talk about, so sometimes they'll even take a person on, not as a patient, but just as an advisor, right? And they say, I will give you advice as a non-professional. So we do have people, if you'd like to reach out to me, you can get my number from Patrick, and I can suggest someone for you.
Question over here.
Yes.
Yeah, right here. Krolos, thanks so much for coming all the way here. I think this is overdue for having this discussion. I do have a question that kind of harkens back to a question that you answered earlier about the Catholic Church and blessing. The way I view it, and from a lot of the people that I've spoken with, they see it almost as trying to remedy something. So the church, a lot of the things you talked about is sitting down, understanding where people are coming from, providing empathy and love and so on. The Catholic Church is trying to find, in their own way, trying to find almost like a remedy or a blessing from the church in some variety. What do we have to offer as a Catholic Church? A lot of the things are descriptive, like empathy, love, so on, but is there anything that's prescriptive that we can offer them?
That's a great question. My opinions get me in trouble, so I will try to refrain them because I'm wearing a black thing. So I will say that I see what Pope Francis is trying to do. He's trying to reach them where they are, and this is where they're at. And I see, potentially a couple coming to them and saying, it would be wonderful if they hate the church, they're probably not going to come to the priest for a blessing, right? So I see that as I see a lot of love there, right? And I get what he's trying to reach people who are in the darkness. What are we doing about it? Not that much, right? We're trying. And like the website I showed you is kind of the first stab at reaching people where they are. So we meet on Zoom every 2 weeks, and we're just a community of people who are just going to not judge, love, and be there for you and support you on your own journey. I wish there was more. I wish there was more we can do. We've got 2 dials we're turning. We're turning a very quickly changing culture in the United States. 10 years ago, this wasn't even a topic that much, and now it is. And you're changing your dial. You're turning a culture dial as well, which is very difficult, right? So you have a very different mindset. I mean, I was in Egypt 3 months ago, and I was sitting with a policeman. He's my cousin's cousin, Aliwa, right? Very high guy. And he was telling me that in Egypt, if you're gay, they'd put you in jail for 3 years. And he's like, yeah, we just put him in prison. It's a crime, right? And if once you're labeled as homosexual, on your national ID, there's a red diagonal thing that says homosexual on it, on your ID for the rest of your life, right? And in Egypt, your ID is everything. So it's a different world, right? So we've got two fronts we're sort of battling at the same time. So with your prayers, we can try to do more. But I feel your question is, you know, we're throwing a lot of stones at the Catholics. What are we doing? And I see that. Yeah. Okay. Question. Sorry. If God knows us before we are born, how does He allow people to be born LGBTQ? This is a very difficult question. I don't really know the answer. I will say that we are in the state of corruption, and we are in a fallen state. And in the liturgy, we say death entered the world through the envy of the devil, and not just death, but disease, corruption, sin, judgment, all of it entered the world. So the world is a corrupted and so many things are not the intent of God, but because of sin, these things are here, right? And these things could be spiritual or they could be physical. It's not God's intent for me to be born blind or to me to have a bad heart. This is not the way God designed man. God designed man with 2 eyes. But some people don't have 2 eyes, right? Did God pick them to not have 2 eyes? I don't know. But I know they don't have 2 eyes. And for me, personally, I'm not smart enough or theological enough to know and get into that debate of to why this person doesn't have 2 eyes. But I'm sure they need someone's hand to hold when they cross the street. So I'll be the hand they hold when they cross the street, without getting into why did God create you like this, and what is God trying to do to me, and what's the intention, and how about I just hold your hand and cross the street with you, and then we figure it out when we all go to heaven. I don't know if that's a satisfying answer, but yes, question. Oh, Buna, yeah.
I'm wearing black, so I get an extra question, right? So it's kind of a comment question. The first part is that there's another approach, really, not about the love is a different approach, but to those who are dealing with this, like as parents maybe, and this you might cover this tomorrow, is that instead of homeschooling and keeping them away and telling them not to engage, kind of, I would say the kid sees that as not trusting them and not establishing the right principles in them. And even the verse in John 17 says, I do not pray that you should take them out of the world, but that you should keep them from the evil one. So they should be able to engage and to know how to engage and to know how to live in this world and to be in the fire, and Christ is with you, and we should pray for them to deal with that. Instead of homeschooling, taking them out, then we're not really teaching them, we're just telling them to not to be able to handle themselves.
I agree 1,000%. I would say, I know you have another comment, but if I don't want my kid to catch a cold, right? I don't want him to get sick. There's several approaches, right? If someone is sneezing, I just kind of pull my kid away, and there's no point in kissing someone who's sneezing. But the other approach of I'm going to keep you in your room where there's no viruses, and I'm going to sanitize everything twice, also doesn't work, right? What I really want to do is I want a son, and I said, okay, you don't want to catch a cold? How about you eat healthy, have vitamin C, get lots of sleep, get some exercise, right? I want to strengthen the child from the inside because they're in the world. The kids at school, half of them are sick every day. Some kid is sniffling. There's always viruses in the air, right? The air will kill you, right? So the attempt by parents, although it's very loving in their mind, of shielding their kids continuously from any virus or any disease or any sin isn't effective, right? This is why when kids go to the dorms, they lose their minds, right? And they just go crazy sexually and drinking and drugs and everything else. Why? Because they were so repressed growing up. And then we say, you see what the dorms did? The dorms are bad. No, it's not the dorms are bad. It's that you didn't build your child from the inside. So then they hit the world and they're like, oh, look at all this, right? And I don't have any conviction of who Christ is in me. I don't have love. So yeah, I'm gonna try it all. And I've been repressed my whole life. You know, I was on a retreat 2 weeks ago. The kids stayed up till 7 o'clock in the morning. 7 o'clock. They never get out. They never get to be away from their parents. Right? So for one night, they were like, finally, my parents aren't. They stayed up till, you know, and I told my kids that when I got home. My kids are in college, and this is a college retreat. And they said, you know, when my kids go to these retreats, they sleep at 10 o'clock. My kids are like, oh yeah, I hate everybody. They all stay awake. Why don't we just go to bed? Why can't we just sleep at 10? My kids are not interested in staying up, right? Because they haven't been repressed their whole life, right? So this idea of cover up my kids, protect them from the world. No, we're called to be the light of the world, right? We have to do this smart. I'm not saying you take a 10-year-old and show them same-sex attracted acts, okay? But yet, I want to build them from the inside, and I have to build them with Christ. And He's God, and He is love, right? And the more I have of that, the better, the stronger the kids are. The kids will see it, they'll know what it is, and they'll resist it. Versus me trying to isolate. Isolating doesn't work. They all have phones. The phones will break. Every attempt you have at isolation, everything you can get a phone blocker and a tracker and a double tracker, you can do whatever you want. Kids are gonna break it. They're smarter than you. So the building from the inside is a much better approach. Sorry. I don't want my kid to get sick, so I'm going to keep him healthy. Healthy is a better approach than keep him in his room and he won't get sick. Oh, sorry, Bunny had a second point. Oh, hold on.
Can clarify the analogy between God created somebody with one eye or with some physical imperfection and somebody we cannot say created him gay or lesbian or whatever. Yeah, there's a as you said, you cannot say, you cannot understand, or you cannot say why God created somebody with one eye. But the statement God created somebody, or make the analogy to somebody who's homosexual, I think it's not in the creation. Because this would be confusing, yeah.
Yeah, I think there was some confusion. So in the verse that Abuna read from Romans as well, he was talking about very specific acts, you know, men who have chosen to be in desire with one another, adulterers, fornicators, etc., etc. So here I want to make a distinction between having a feeling, which may or may not be real, right? I was talking earlier, and you know, when you're going through puberty, you may have feelings that aren't, that go away after a while. But I'm talking about someone who has this feeling versus someone who's acting on this feeling, who is a fornicator, an adulterer, and a sodomite, and acting on these things either physically or through pornography or lusting or whatever the case may be. So, this is important. So when I use the word, this person is homosexual, I don't mean he's doing anything or she's doing anything. I have no idea. What? And
feeling which against God's command?
Let me ask you, could someone, are people born genetically disposed to anger? Or genetically disposed to addiction? I don't know. It's very hard to know. Because, and there's so even let's go a step further. What if this person was sexually abused when he was 4?
Mm-hmm.
Did God allow him to be sexually abused?
No, but again, he's not created. And as a result, could be complication in his life led him to be one way or another.
I guess I don't know. That's all I can say.
Because
I don't know.
It was a big issue a few years ago that it is
Yeah.
genetic and whatever, and they agree that it is not, because they want now to tell them today you feel a man, you are a man, tomorrow you feel a woman, you are a woman. So they got away from the saying that it is genetic. But
I honestly, it's not an argument worth having.
and I like what you said, the previous, that regardless what's happening, now we have a case, we
Then
are
walk
not,
out.
we are dealing with the case, somebody's sick already.
Yeah, exactly.
Later on, we can try to find a preventive medicine, but now he is sick,
Yeah.
and we deal with it. But my main concern is that somebody will accept the idea that it is genetic or God created him this way. I don't think God will create somebody in a way against his commandments.
I don't want to belabor the point, but I think we are all created with, since we are, well, yeah, I mean, we're all subject to sin in different ways. فيعني, what about the boy who is created very heterosexual and very into girls, and that's just the way he is? But, you know, but we can say God made him that way. I don't know. Okay, yes. Oh, okay, sorry. What do you do if a same-sex couple comes to you, and how to deal with them? Okay, that's a good question. I'll ask you another 10 questions. And I think from me asking you 10 questions, you should know the answer is I can't answer this question on just, right? So what's your relationship with this couple? How old is this couple? How old are you? Are they close to the church or not? Are you in a close relationship with them? Are they coming out to you as in, you know, help us? Are they coming out to you like accept us? And these are all difficult, this is all very case specific, right? I can tell you that you should not judge them and condemn them and attack them, and you should be there for them, and you should love them and be support for them. And that's what I would say. That's just the answer for everybody, right? From there, how much you want to go further is up to you. Maybe guidance from your father in confession, right? Maybe lead them to a father in confession. The fact that they're coming to you and not their father in confession means maybe they don't have a good relationship with the church, or maybe they don't want to talk to their father in confession quite yet, right? So again, you have to be very wise in how you approach this, because unfortunately now we're in a very sensitive time. Any hint of judgment, any hint of, you know, Leviticus says you're going to hell, any hint of that means they don't talk to you anymore, right? And when you see the story of Zacchaeus, it's very insightful. Christ goes into Zacchaeus' house and wants to be with him. Zacchaeus is a horrible man, okay? And the people attack Jesus, right? And they murmur against him. How could he do such a thing, to go be with a sinful man? And the reason they attack him is because they think there's one of two reasons. If I go be with someone who's sinful, it's because one, I want to be sinful with you. I want to participate in the sin. Or two, I'm condoning it, right? I'm going to say, you know what? You're doing great. You should tax collect. That's a great job. Way to, you know, get the widows and the orphans, and you should take all their money, right? So the people were murmuring because they thought, one, Jesus was participating, or two, Jesus was condoning. We don't participate or condone with sin, but we do number three, which is what Jesus did, which he was what? Being light to Zacchaeus. He came and he was light. What kind of light was he? He was love. And all the people who yelled at Zacchaeus before didn't change Zacchaeus. All the people that called him all the names in the world didn't change Zacchaeus. Jesus came and he sat with him and he showed him love. And then Zacchaeus changed. And then Zacchaeus repented because he was shown love, first. Jesus, God loved us first. That's why we love him back, right? And I am the image of Christ, right? So when this couple comes to my house, I will show them the love of Christ. That doesn't mean I go and I say, you know, tax collecting is a good job. You should continue doing it. May God bless your tax collecting. That's not what he said. Yes, sir.
Wait, no, in order.
Yes. He really wants to say this thing. Khali.
Just because they came together to you talking about this, it's very hard to separate them now because it's late in their relation or in their point of view in this situation. So if you talk to them with love, it means you are accepting them.
No. The statement, if I talk to them with love, that means I accept their sin, is not correct. I can still talk to them in love at any point in time. Let me go back. Did Saint Macarius accept paganism when he talked to this man with love? He was in the act of doing pagan worship at the time. Saint Macarius comes upon him as he's doing idol worship, and he greets him with love.
Yes, but the difference is the pagans, they are out of Christianity. They are not Christians, so you are not accepting what they are doing. But here, couple are coming to you. They are Christians.
Oh, I don't know that.
Because they will come
This-
inside our church because they are Christians. I'm saying if they come as they are and they want to discuss or how to deal with this situation.
Okay, so this is kind of what I was talking about earlier. I think you filled in a story that's not on this card, right? Which is good, which is why whenever you answer a question like this, each of you imagined a different scenario. And then when I answered it, each of you measured your scenario against my answer and have something wrong with my answer for a different reason, right? So that's why I started with, I have 20 other questions, right? And the story you told is not the one on this card, but you filled in your own story. It is a nice story. But, so this is where the wisdom comes in, right? And that's why I don't like to answer questions like, what do I do when? And I'm going to talk about this at the parents' meeting tomorrow, but we want answers. What do I say? What do I do? How do I talk? And that's not a wise approach, right? The better approach is to understand and to be, and then you will know the answer in the moment, because each moment is different.
Question.
Yes.
Yeah, so I see your point about being loving and talking in love, and how maybe the Pope on the Catholic side was starting to meet people where they are at. However, when we're talking about the church and people coming and maybe seeking blessings and things like that, it could be that it's more to alleviate the sense of guilt that they have, and they would continue doing what they are doing. So I think we can continue to engage in the discussion only on condition if they are really trying to get away from the sin. But we cannot just condone and keep talking to them in love while they're still continuing in their sin.
Sure. What I would add to that is this is definitely a priest pastoral decision. So we need to be careful as people and realize we're not priests. And when I talk to the youth tonight, I'm going to make that distinction. We are not the priests, right? There's God, and he's the judge. There's the priest, and he is the interface with the church. Who takes communion, who does what, who comes, how do we handle certain things? And then there's us. And not all of us are called to be in that discerning, truth-telling position. Not all of us are called to give advice. Not all of us are asked our opinions. And so our first line of defense as a mass congregation has to be the way God loves us, unconditionally, right? And once we start putting in conditions of that as a lay person, to me it gets a little scary, right? Because if every one of you decides how you would interact with this particular situation and then say, no, let me tell you the right way to do this, and everyone's out giving answers, it gets very, and we love to give answers, right? Especially Arab males. We all know all the answers, right? Ask us directions, we know the directions. Okay, so it's a very dangerous world. So I would say hold back any kind of judgment or evaluation or decision. You know what? You know, in the Bustan, in the paradise of the fathers, you know, it says, the monk says when he sees his brother fall, he says, him today, me tomorrow. That should be our stance, always. Now, with homosexuality, it's very easy to say, ha ha ha, but not me. That will never happen to me. I'm better than him or her, okay? But any sin, him today, me tomorrow. I judge no one for anything, right? This is a better stance as a general population. Unless God has called you to be the person who gives advice. My general...
To get index card.
Next question, sorry. That means I need to end, is what that's saying. Can you tell us the difference between love and acceptance? I assume you mean acceptance of the sin or the lifestyle and love. Okay. I'll tell you a story, I guess. There's a girl I speak with, and she does self-harm. Okay? She cuts herself. And kids do that. And she's been struggling against this for years, and we've been talking about it for years, and when she struggles, you know, she texts us, and she, you know, and wants help, and she's gone to therapy and rehab, and okay? And when she hides these blades from her mom and her dad because she doesn't want them to find, her parents to find them, so she hides them in a room, and she hides them in different places, okay? But when she cuts herself, usually I'm one of the first people she calls. Not because she thinks I accept cutting. She knows I don't. She knows I don't think it's a good idea. She knows I think it's a coping mechanism. I've told her all of these things before. But yet, she calls me, right? I remember my father in confession, Abun Tunis back in the day, he said, it was like, you know, when a parent is sometimes spanking a child, and the child is being spanked, so the child is uncomfortable, and then he runs to his mother's arms, who's spanking him, for comfort, okay? It's kind of like that. Even though she knows I don't want her to do that, I'm still the first person, one of the first people she goes to feel that love, right? I messed up. I will run to my father's arms, right? So acceptance of the lifestyle of the sin, you know, our position should be known, right? If I'm talking to someone who's same-sex attracted, they know my position. They know I don't think this is God's plan. I don't, right? That doesn't mean I'm going to listen to you, or I'm going to say anything negative to you, or I'm going to judge you, but you know my position. And I will still be the first person you come to when you've had a bad experience and you say, you know what, I messed up again, right? That's when you know it's happening, okay? I can't define it. I don't know how to do that. But I can tell you the outcome, right? When your child comes to you and says, Dad, I'm in a lot of trouble. I'm in jail. Or, you know, I messed up. I did this. He knows you don't like what he did, but you're the first person he goes to. That's the difference between love and acceptance. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. So a question and a comment. So the first thing is the question, how do we set boundaries so the church does not go with the flow of the political correctness? Because I imagine most of people are afraid of one, you know, we want to love everyone. We want to show them that they are accepted as human beings, and by no means we should not condemn them, condemn anyone who is attracted to same sex or ever. But how can we protect our church and our kids from that the whole what is going around with political correctness is. Because what people are afraid, we're going to love the person, we're going to accept the person, and we should do this because Christ loved everyone, but he did not validate their sin. In our message to our kids, it has to include something that this is not correct. Whether we have to develop to say it in a loving way, the example you said for your, the daughter, I will not actually certainly be angry, I'll not have, my veins engorged, but in my message as a parent, I have to make sure I do not validate this, that this is just not what Christ wishes for us. We love them, we accept them, we deal with them, in a very nice way. That's what Christ told us. That's what we do with anyone. And it is a sin, whether it's watching, showing pornography, having, premarital sex, they're all sins. But the problem with the world right now, it is okay to say to everything else that we disagree with, but when it comes to the LGBT, it is not allowed for people to say their opinion. I love you, I accept you, and I respect you. You get all your rights. But it's okay for me to say I disagree with this as a life for me. The second point is, again, a lot of people are also worried about what if you have two couples or a transgender right now. We are coming here to church, and now we accepted this too much, and again, hopefully we'll never get, but now he wants to be a deacon. What's going to happen? Do you want to have the holy matrimony, sacrament? So this is what everyone's concern. Also that, yes, but no doubt we have to love, accept, listen, hear. We should never condemn them, but where to draw the boundaries. And my opinion, our message has to include that this is incorrect. I'm not condemning them, but I'm telling them this is not biblical. This is anti-Christ. This is wrong. But not loving them is not with Christ. But accepting or agreeing with this is anti-Christ. So, thank you.
I think we said the same thing, just very differently. And I guess all I'm encouraging you to do is, I think the way I said it is more receptive than the way you said it. But I think we both said the same thing, right? We don't want our principles to be compromised and to say what is good evil and evil good, and a slippery slope and all of these things. I mean, I think we all agree. What I'm advocating isn't that at all. What I am advocating is the approach to reaching that. And my contention is, if our approach is too heavy-handed, then it will result in the opposite outcome. And it's just, it's like telling your kid, don't drink, you're not allowed to drink, drinking is haram, don't ever drink. You're guaranteeing an alcoholic, right? So that's all I'm saying, right? So the heavy-handedness, it just doesn't work. And it's also not Christian, right? But I see your fear, and I understand and I applaud. Like, yeah, we are scared as parents, and we are scared as a community, and I understand that fear. But fear, like I said in the very beginning, always makes very bad decisions. And fear drives us to do things in a way that aren't appropriate. I'll tell this story about my daughter, Gulmara. Okay, so, yes, go ahead. What's that? Okay, so let me ask you a question. What's the best way to teach your kids not to beat your wife? Because that's a sin, right? That's a rhetorical question. I don't want you to answer. So, okay. So let me, exactly, right? So I think the best thing you can do is just don't beat her, right? That's probably your best approach. I could give them lots of talks on don't beat my wife, don't beat your wife, don't beat people. But it's probably just watching you not beat your wife is probably a good enough lesson. What's the best way to teach them not to curse? Don't curse, right? So they're going to learn from you what's natural, right? Because, yeah, they're hearing these things in school, but they're also seeing their parents. And their parents are thousands of observations, okay? So they may ask you, and they may challenge, right? But the baseline is still there, okay? And it's you. And it's you being calm. All right, so I'll tell you a different story. My son came up to me and said, sorry, we're not, my son came up to me in the 8th grade and he said, I don't believe in God anymore, because I studied high school biology and we studied the theory of evolution, and evolution says there is no God, so I'm done. And I was like, oh, so this is my first son, right? So, and 8th grade, younger than I expected. I expect this in 10th grade. And so the reaction is very, very, very important at this point, okay? I had to take a very deep breath and just calmly say, oh, well, my heart's beating, okay? My son just told me he's an atheist. And I said, so what did you study in biology? What did you learn? And he goes, oh, the theory of, natural selection. I said, oh yeah, that's a great theory. Natural selection makes perfect sense, right? The birds with the small beaks, they die because they can't eat the bugs, and the birds with the long beaks, they live because they get... There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that in Christianity. And he just, and I'm just telling you this because that reaction was important. And then he's like, he saw me calm, and he's like, and this guy still goes to church, and he's very calm. And I told him about natural selection, which I thought was airtight, and he's still calm. So he calmed down, right? And then he goes, oh, okay, well, we also learn about survival of the fittest. Oh, well, yeah, of course, that also makes sense. So my reaction had been, well, that's because your high school teacher is an atheist and they're trying to infiltrate our truth, and this is wrong, and evolution comes from the devil. I've heard priests say evolution is from the devil, okay? And if I had gone that approach, he would have fought back, evolution is right, let me find a Google search, I'll tell you why atheism is right, and we would have had it out, and I would have got the opposite outcome, okay? So what I'm advising, right, the calm approach is the right approach, okay? I will tell you the story about my daughter because I think it'll be, my daughter came up to me and she was in 9th grade and she said, most of the girls in my class are lesbians. And I said, oh, really? Again, heartbeats, right? Including some of her friends. And I wait 5 seconds. 5 seconds. And I say, what percentage do you think are lesbians? And she says, like 75%. I wait 10 seconds. Just we're driving, and I'm just looking at the road. And then I say, oh, that seems kind of high. And she goes, yeah. I go, the national average is like 5%. She goes, really? I go, yeah. I wait 5 seconds. And I say, that's a lot higher than the national average. She goes, yeah, it is. I wait 5 seconds. I go, do you get a lot of attention when you come out as gay? And she goes, yeah, you do. And I go, oh, like what? And she talks. You go to clubs, and they post on Instagram, and everyone makes you your friend, and everyone celebrates you, la, 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 okay? And I listen, and I wait 5 seconds. And then I say, do you think anyone, I said, that's a lot of attention. Do you think anyone comes out just to get attention? And she goes, oh, yeah. I bet you they do, because when they do come out, all the girls give them all this attention, and then they have a big mashahad of la, la, la. She goes on, I listen. And then I go, it's sad to me that you have to come out to get attention, that you have to pretend to be somebody else to get attention. Isn't that sad? And I showed her compassion and tenderness. I wanted her to see her sister, not hateful, not them, not they're trying to get us, not they're trying to get you, to see her the way Jesus sees her. Sad. Habibti, are you really pretending to be gay just to get attention? And then she goes, yeah, that is so sad. I feel so bad for them. Right? If I had jumped in, taught them they're wrong, said this is not right, this is Mish'arif, they're trying to get you, I have to protect you from them. What's their name? Who are their parents? Let me call the principal. She would have fought, defended them, attacked me, attacked the church, attacked God, correct? So when you handle it calmly, the result is better, right? So so if I want to teach them that heterosexual marriage is the right marriage, just have a heterosexual marriage. And they'll see that. And they go, I see mom and dad. I see others. I see people I respect. I see it, right? And there's little burps. I mean, they're teenagers. They're going to say things. They're going to do things. That's okay, right? That's okay. Handle it calmly. And the more you react, the more they push back. That's all I'm saying.
Can we take 2 more questions? Maybe okay, one index and one more. I think we underestimated
we sure did, didn't we? Okay. Okay, I like this one. How do you handle high school youth who speak using bigoted language during church group in front of the rest of the group of the youth? not just shut down, remove them from the class. I would definitely, you have a responsibility as a servant to protect the people in your class and make that place a safe place. The church must be a safe place for everyone. This is my dad's home. No one does anything to me in my dad's home, right? This is the safest place on earth. We have to keep it that way. All of us have that responsibility. This is the safest place on earth. This is the hospital. This is where I go to the doctor and I say, my heart is hurting, my kidney is hurting. The worst thing about me, I'm going to expose to you, right? And the church teaches even that, St. James tells us that confess your sins before one another. And as you know, in the early church, confession was public, right? This is a place, it's like an AA meeting, right? We all come together, we're all sinners, we're all broken, and we all expose ourselves and say, look, I'm broken and you're broken. So the church has to be that safe of a place. Sunday school is a microcosm of the church. 2 hours ago, I texted a man who has wanted to kill himself since he was little because of the amount of abuse he got. He's now 45. He still hates the church. And the amount of abuse and picking that happened to him from his Sunday school class, from the church. And it was unstopped by the servant. It was not stopped by the priest. And to this day, he hates all of it. Okay? It is your duty to stop that. The class has to be a safe place. Now, how you handle it is very important, right? And lots of things online. But I think it's okay to handle it publicly. You should definitely handle it privately with the kid. But the other kids watched what you did when something bad was said in class. And they saw that you did not stick up for that person who was being marginalized. Okay? Jesus went to the lepers and went down to their level. He protected people who could not protect themselves. So when you see someone picking on someone in the class or picking on a group of people, they're watching you. What would Jesus do? How would Jesus respond? Would he sit there and go, ha ha ha, good one? Right? Or would he say something like, you know what, it hurts me to hear something like that. It hurts me when you talk like that, right? Because that's not the way Christ talked about people. So it is your duty in front of the kids to let everyone know in this place, this is a safe place. We don't do that here. And for too long, we have accepted those things to happen in the church. We look the other way, you know, well, and that's what kids do. Kids are sensitive now, okay? I don't know why they're all sensitive, but they're all very sensitive. We have to, this is the reality on the ground, right? And we have to deal with that sensitivity and be that thoughtful so that they can feel that this place is safe.
Question here.
Yeah.
Actually, this is more of a comment. So there's actually a very good response to why does God allow this? You know, because I think a lot of people are frustrated, like, why do we even have to deal with this? You know, if God is just, shouldn't he just not allow this, right? So it's a very good, simple answer. God is love, right? So if I could force you to love me, is that love? No. So then there has to be free will, which means I can choose. And then if you do something I don't like and I undo it, is that free will? No. So that's why God had to be incarnate and to come and to save us. So it's the same answer for why do we have this? You know, so God created us in his image, truly free, and every person can choose what they want. And about the question of attraction, like, so first of all, you know, Henny's here about child development. I think you actually don't know if you're a girl or a boy until you're like at least 3, maybe 3 years old, 4 years old, I'm not sure exactly how old. And then about being, so, you know, before you realize what gender you might be, you can't be attracted to another person if you don't know. You know, so when people are telling like 5 years old or 6 years old and they're dressing as a girl or they're dressing as a boy, that's natural. They're playing, you know. And this whole attraction thing doesn't happen until 4th grade, 5th grade, you know.
I like that point, and I think we'll talk about this with in the parents' meeting a little bit, but and the youth meeting. But there is within normal, if you know, there is a distribution, right? And there's some people, you know, there's boys who are more effeminate and girls who are more masculine. And in the old days, you know, when a girl liked to play with balls and hit a baseball and, you know, whatever, right? No one said, oh, you must be a lesbian, you know. But now that's what's offered, you know, to these kids. Let me just take one more question. Okay, I see we're trying to give some solutions for a problem we are facing, but what are we doing as a church to prevent spreading it? And I want to address this question because this is a good question. What are we doing as a church to prevent spreading it? What is the church's role? What is the church? Is its job to prevent spreading sin? Our job is to, as St. Paul says, I preach Christ and Him crucified. Our job, preach Christ and preach Him crucified. Our job is to be the light of the world because Christ is in us and people see us and they see love, and that is what prevents sin from spreading. But that's not my objective. My objective is not to create a moral world. The world is fallen and broken. It just is. So my goal as a church is not to, how do I stop all the people out there from sinning? My job as a Christian starts with me. Change me. Look at me. This is Christianity. Deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. This is Christianity, correct? So start with yourself. Focus on you, right? And I can tell you, personal experience, that I have sins that I've been struggling with for 10 years, and I still can't change them. And I try. And I go back to Abuna, and I said, I did it again, Abuna. It's really hard. It's a lot of work. You spend your whole life doing it, okay? For you to go and say, now I want to go change everyone else, that's impossible. Good luck, right? You can't even change your spouse. My objective is not to change people. My objective is to be the light of the world. Be light. Saint Seraphim of Sarov says, acquire the Holy Spirit and 1,000 around you will be transformed. How do we do that? Acquire the Holy Spirit. You be light. And when you think back to who in your life changed you, it wasn't a person who yelled at you or condemned you. It was a person at church, an uncle or a tant or a deacon or a buna or whoever, that was light and love. Think back. Who's the Sunday school teacher you remember? The one who loved you. Easy, right? That's who changes. That's how we change. I'm not teaching something new. I'm teaching about Jesus, correct? Okay. So you're mixing a few issues. If you're saying teaching a different doctrine, okay, so someone's teaching that there's no Holy Trinity, there's only Father and Son and no Holy Spirit, مثلا. Is it my duty to tell him I believe that there's the Holy Spirit? Yes. And the fathers of the church will tell you, you can accuse me of sin, but don't accuse me of being a heretic. You can say, you're a fornicator, I won't fight you. You're an evil man, I won't fight you, but don't call me a heretic. So in the doctrine of the church, no, we don't step down ever in the theology of who Christ is and why he came. Right? But is my personal job to go out and rid the world of evil? No, start with yourself. And you'll be so consumed with yourself that you won't really think like that. And that's what the saints say. Abuna Shoy Kemen says, anyone who judges anyone hasn't started to look at their own sin yet. That's the reality. It's easy to look at other people's sin.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Archdeacon Mark Solomon. This was, I think, from